What's up, everybody? This is Caleb Carter coming at you from Mac Football Forever. It is a Friday night for me, but you're going to be listening to this a little bit later. Really another exciting week of Mac Football, and we're kind of at the point where everything feels like a plus. Everything's a bonus. We're lucky to have gotten here. Every player and coach and person around a program that is taking coronavirus seriously and is taking care of themselves and being considerate of those around them. You're the reason that we've gotten to this point so far. We're grateful that some people have taken this seriously and that people are being considerate of one another. And because of that, we were able to have Western Michigan and Toledo this week, which that game boggles the mind. And there was so much to talk about from that game. We just decided to give you a little bit of extra content to gear up to, and hopefully you can come back to this at the end of the season or in the off season and think about, holy crap, did that game really happen? Like, was it just as absurd in hindsight, now that I'm looking at it a couple months down the line, as it felt on game night? And if you were looking on Twitter, social media in general, yes, it was that absurd. I mean, just for starters, Toledo early on, offense looks great, just really balanced all around. They were down a couple players with injury, but still came out all things firing. Offensively looked really good. It was 14-14 there in the first half. The Western went for a fourth down conversion with Darius Jefferson, fumbled the football on fourth down. Didn't really matter. Toledo took the ball and took the momentum into the half with a 24-14 lead. Bryant Koback providing the touchdown that gave him that 24-14 lead. In the second half, things were really geared towards Toledo. They were playing really good football, balanced, even though Shaquille Seymour did not come back in the second half due to injury. He was not the only player to be lost to injury during the game. Terrence Taylor, one of possibly the best pass rusher on the Rockets defense, also went out in the first half with an injury. So Toledo was hurting in that respect defensively. So in the second half, it was big for Western in some ways to not face as much of an impediment. All that said and done, the officials were Mac. Things went bad from time to time there, and there were between the Patrick Lupro potential interception on the kind of phantom interception call, that capped when Toledo was able to pound the ball into the end zone right after that. That capped a 13-play, 99-yard drive over 6.5 minutes. So that put Toledo up 31-21 at the time and late in the third quarter. Toledo had another chance to score after that, and a blocked field goal from Western managed to keep it a 10-point margin. Later, Western was able to get an acrobatic touchdown. Early in the fourth quarter, obviously, Western Michigan drives again. Ellaby finds Sky Moore, who's as you can probably imagine as the season wears on, it's going to be more of the Moore and Eskridge show. Jalen Hall obviously has been a big part of that. And Western pulls within 3 points with about just over 9 minutes to go. And there's more kind of nonsense after that. Bryant Koback gives the referees another chance to shine on the brightest stage of Wednesday night, weeknight football. He catches the ball about 6 yards short of the marker, 5 yards short of the marker, and kind of backs into a potential first down. I think everybody and their mother thought that was short, but it was called. He was given a decent mark on the field by about like a chain link, and the Twitter reaction, as you can probably see, I will probably throw up some tweets for you to see from this, was not fun. The MAC put out a tweet that was essentially like, "Man, how exciting is this?" And just everything was like, "You're terrible. Your officials are terrible. Fire them after this game. Do a review. This is awful." And I honestly, I already went over this. If you listened to our last episode, you would have heard this, me going over this. But it's I just find it funny when everybody kind of unites against the officials or against like a player or something in MAC football, because all the attention for the night on social media, as far as football fans goes, kind of directed towards one team. And that's, as much as I understand the tendency of fans, and I to a certain extent agree, want to have weekend football and want to be able to go to games on Saturdays. What's special sometimes about that weeknight football is everybody's attention is focused on us. Whoever's watching college football that day and gives a crap about college football that day is paying attention to the MAC. And so everybody who's paying attention, MAC fan or not, is all just jumping into the MAC. The MAC Twitter's garbage, or their mentions, and just spewing garbage and just making fun of it. And I'm just laughing the whole time while just just enjoying it and just being like, gosh, I miss this so much. And it still feels 2 weeks in, like it just feels like such a blessing that MAC football is back, even, again, regardless of whether it's a smart idea to have it back or not. Just enjoying it because I've enjoyed it for the better course of a decade. So getting to the end of the game, Tiago Caps misses the extra point after the touchdown. After they drive down the field, Sean Tyler catches a few check down passes. Caleb Elby pulls in a few check down passes or throws a few check down passes. In the post game comments, Coach Tim Lester actually gave Elby, the guy who's had less experience, some credit for doing that. Younger guys or less experienced guys don't always throw the check down pass. They often, in those situations, they want to throw the ball down the field, force it into tight windows, and make the big play. But sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you can check it down to your athletic running back for a couple of yards when Toledo's playing off. And when they had the chance, they made the plays they needed to make. D. Eskridge obviously made some big plays. Second straight week with over 230 all-purpose yards. 7 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown. Really explosive touchdown early in the second half, and several huge catches on the drive that pulled Western Michigan within a possession, and the possession that they went ahead on, and then the game winner, the nonsensical phantom whistle / ready-to-play whistle, should they have blown a whistle when all they needed to do was, send the marker. But no one was guarding Jalen Hall anyway. All he had to do was watch the ball softly fall into his arms and let cacophony ensue as everybody celebrated. So, taking a look at what all of that looks like in hindsight, first of all, God, that's what another nonsense night of football. I feel like that was, in hindsight, it's easier to look at it and say, okay, that makes sense that would happen to Western versus Toledo as opposed to like Buffalo versus Miami, which were our 2 games that we were the most excited about heading into this week. I know a lot of people were, at least. But you get to look at some things, whether it's the officiating and how much nonsense it was, and it's kind of, you get to look up the, hey, well, guess what, ball don't lie scenario where justice prevailed in the end or something along those lines, however you want to think about that. But again, at the end of the night, Western comes out on top. It's interesting looking back through some game notes. For Ellaby, he actually still has his collegiate starting debut was against Toledo in 2018, and he went 28 for 293 yards through the air in that game. That's still his personal passing best. And then this time around, he was 20 of 29, 284 yards, 4 touchdowns, avoided pressure. His offensive line gave him the time. I mean, props to Caleb Ellaby. And as I've already mentioned, Tim Lester gave him a lot of credit. He says he doesn't call a lot of plays during games. He usually leaves that to the guys who get paid to do that. But he absolutely did call that 2-minute drill. So Tim Lester taking a little credit there and talking about the context behind all of that. Some other things to kind of take away from that game. Keith Seymour gets injured early in the game. He doesn't get to play in the second half. Toledo's so used to just having that multi-back dynamic, and they had some good stuff from Bryant Koback, was really productive. Seymour didn't get to play in the second half, but Micah Kelly had some really good runs as well. Both of these teams are very blessed with 3 very good running backs. Sean Tyler, 100 yards rushing on 12 carries. Some really important check down receptions from Ellaby late in the game. Both Ellaby and Peters both looked fantastic. And I mean, I think you can make an argument that those are your 2 best quarterbacks in the conference. And then I say this with the full knowledge that Dustin Crum is fantastic. I do wonder how that would work in a MAC championship scenario. So now I don't know. I am super excited to see what Buffalo and Kent State looks like when they play one another. If Kent State proves that they're actually better than, they've even shown so far, then great. And we get to see maybe Dustin Crum versus somebody like Caleb Ellaby, see who can excel at that level. Otherwise, we're looking at a couple things more to look at. Toledo, some tackles for loss, but no really big game-changing tackles for loss. No big types of like momentum switching defensive plays. And while Western did kind of, they had 10 tackles for loss, 9 players with at least a half tackle for loss, a couple guys for multiple tackles for loss. Shout out, we didn't really talk about him in the episode this week. A.J. Thomas, second week with a big performance consecutively. He had the pick 6 he had a pick 6 already against Akron. This past week, he had 8 tackles, a sack, a pass breakup, and 2 tackles for loss. So he continues to do big things from the safety spot. Western Michigan's getting some good production from a number of defensive guys. Ali Fayad had a sack and a forced fumble, and he was one of the guys to leave an impact. But he did go out with an injury. What his status is, I don't know because I haven't seen actual follow up on that. So hopefully he's doing all right. That would be a big loss for Western. And a couple more things to highlight. Eskridge, second straight game over 230 yards total offense. Toledo over 500 yards total offense. Western had 2 quarterback hurries and 2 sacks. If you're Western, you're probably hoping for a little bit more, but Toledo's ability to be so balanced obviously counteracts that a bit. Western averaged not 5.5 yards to Toledo's 4.2 yards per play. Western, on rushes, 5.5 to 4.2 on rushing plays. Western averaged 7.7 yards per play to Toledo's 5.9. Toledo actually kind of just controlled the game for a lot of it with the ball, but time of possession means, honestly, to an extent, really doesn't mean as much in football anymore. And that's a topic you could explore largely more later. But Toledo had the ball 38 minutes to Western's about 22 minutes. So that was the case. And one of the bigger stats I thought would play a bigger role in this result was Toledo was doing really well on third down. They were converting when they absolutely had to because their options were so plentiful and they were so smart about how they went about it. Western was 2 of 10 on third down, but the combination of explosive plays and big pickups on first and second down paid a really big difference for Western. So we're looking at this. We've seen some really good offensive football from Western and Toledo through 2 games. Neither defense is bad, and they still managed to play the shootout, which at this point, if you're a MAC fan, you probably love anyway, regardless. And they head into the next week, Western especially, looking at Central Michigan, and that's going to be the game that most who are passionate fans about this conference at large are going to be more interested in. And so I know that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in how Richardson's looking at quarterback for Central Michigan. Outside of that, we're looking at Toledo and Eastern Michigan as the next game. And Eastern's looked a little bit better than I would have given them credit for. Alex is a sucker, and he likes to give Eastern all the credit in the world. So hopefully that could be a fun game. But outside of that, not as many fun games on the schedule this week, so Western Central is going to be super big. So I think that's about all I've got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know I tossed a lot of information at you in a very short amount of time. Excited about how this week went once more. We're seeing some things we didn't expect, seeing some things that obviously were leading us into being even more excited about a potential matchup in the West for like Toledo or like Western and Central. Toledo obviously is not out of it yet. Things could go sideways, and somebody could lose and cost it all in the chaos. We know how that's been in recent years. So obviously, if we're so lucky as to keep having games because people are taking care of themselves and staying home if they don't have to, hopefully players can stay safe. Their coaches, their families can stay safe, and we'll be looking at a few more weeks of football regardless of what this looks like.